So I'm so excited. I think I was just introduced, but I'm Claire Mazur. I'm the co-founder of a website called Of a Kind. We sell the pieces and tell the stories of emerging fashion designers, so I'm so excited to have this conversation with all these amazing designers. How many of you guys want to be designers? Okay, good. We have a good crowd. So I'm actually just going to let everybody introduce themselves, and we can start with Katie Ermilio.
Hi, I'm Katie Ermilio. My line is also called Katie Ermilio, and it is 3 years old. And I am not formally trained. My dad is a bespoke menswear designer, so that's kind of where I picked up the craft. Yeah.
My name's Daniel Vosovic. I run my own namesake line, Daniel Vosovic, based in New York. We just hit our 3.5-year mark, and I got my training very quickly. 3 years at a community college in Grand Rapids, Michigan, then went to FIT, did 2 years in the one-year program, moved to Italy, studied at a sister school there, moved to London, studied there for a bit, and then came back to New York to finish at FIT.
I'm Reece Solomon. My line is called Reece Hudson. It's a handbag company. We just hit 4 years from when we founded. And my formal training is, I actually studied communications for college at Boston University, and then I had my formal fashion training at Parsons after.
My name's Kaylin Howarth, and I have a line called Kaylin as well. And I'm going into my 4th year this year. And I got my training at Parsons, and with a little bit of stuff on the side. A little self-taught situation.
Hi, I'm Rachel Antonoff, and my line is Rachel Antonoff. We are also in our 4th year, and I'm not formally trained. I sort of fell into this in a funny way and learned by doing.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting about being a designer now is, and that I've learned from working with so many designers, is that you don't actually have to know how to do everything anymore. We're kind of at a place now where if you don't know how to sketch, you can hire someone to sketch for you. If you don't know how to sew, you can hire sewers. And so I'm curious, how many of you guys know how to make a pattern?
I mean, I do now, but I didn't.
And Rachel, you don't at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
so, and you just hired people to do this for you. Tell us a little bit about how it works if you can't do that part yourself.
The way that I got into this, I've always been designing. I just didn't necessarily realize that's what I was doing, because I would just create these looks in my head and wish I owned them. And then I had a roommate a really long time ago, like 10 years ago, and we would just sort of talk about dresses that we wish we had, and so we started sketching some of them, and I can't remember what made us go from just having these ideas to wanting to actually make them real. But we took our sketches to a seamstress, who was actually my childhood neighbor. It was like incredibly DIY. And she made us 3 samples, and when we saw them, it was just so incredibly exciting to see something that we had come from our heads become tangible. And then there was just a series of incredibly fortunate events, and it kind of snowballed. And for a while, it was like a nightmare where you didn't know the SATs were that day, or you're in the circus and you don't know what you're doing. And so that was a line before this one, and I really learned through a series of shocking mistakes that I can't believe I'm still here. I can't believe some of my buyers are still with me. And when I started Rachel Antonoff was when I really felt like I know what I'm doing. But I don't know how to make a pattern. I still sketch, and then someone does a better sketch. She's here right now. And we have pattern makers, and yeah.
You make it work.
Yeah.
That's really great. I think another thing that's really interesting is that not all of you guys worked for designers before you started. So I know, Reece, you and I spoke, and you were like, there wasn't the line out there that I envisioned, and I needed to start my own. But Daniel, you left finished Project Runway and were really well poised to start your own line because you had a lot of attention, and you didn't. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, and it actually harkens back to what Rachel was saying, is that when I was on Runway, I left, and there was all of a sudden millions of people around the world who knew not only what I designed, but how I designed, how I acted under stress, like very weird personal things that you don't really know about Donna Karan, and you don't really know about even like this panel. Like, you don't really know what we're like. And I'm a very critical, analytical thinker, and I realized that fluff that's up here that you guys see, like the public sees, is not a substitute for knowing how to run a business. And I knew that when I was 23. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna get more of the formal training that I know will give me a company that, should I ever have children, I can pass off to in 50 years. So on that note, to touch base, I actually would say that it's imperative that you know at least how to do a little bit of everything, because if you ever want to learn how to manage people and you don't have, I mean, you just said that it failed and then you came back, or it didn't work out as well.
Well, I just learned through a bunch of mistakes, and you know, obviously now I can look at, I know things, I just wouldn't be able to make a pattern.
Totally.
But, you know, I know how to talk to pattern makers, and those are things that I learned through all of that time.
And there was, I think, my point being is that the mistakes that we all have made, luckily we're still here, but I'm sure we can name a dozen friends who are as talented, who are more well connected, who maybe whatever, but if you don't know what's wrong in that moment, fashion will fly by. Like, the industry won't wait for you. So that's why I encourage you guys to have a base understanding of pattern sketching. You don't have to be great at it, but it helps buoy the mistakes of when you trip up.
You have to at least speak the language.
Exactly, and so that's why I decided to work for other people for 5 years and speak the language, learn the language.
Yeah, and Reece, you sort of went the other way, and I think part of what is also interesting about that is you went into it with a business partner. So you were sort of like, I don't know everything, so I have to work with someone who does know what I don't know. So can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like to take that
Yeah, well,
path?
actually, I interned for a few years with Proenza Schooler and then Rag & Bone. And so that at least gave me insight into the way a fashion company that I really respected and wanted to emulate in many ways worked. Obviously, I thought I knew everything at that point, which I absolutely did not. My business partner was a really close friend of mine, my age as well. He also, felt that he knew it all. We made a million mistakes. He didn't come from like years and years of work experience either. He had some internships and a little bit of working for some designers and magazines. And we just kind of figured it out as we went along. And as Daniel said, and we made so many mistakes, like changed everything over, but we had to learn through those mistakes. So on one hand, it's like, I would say you should be more prepared before starting. On the other hand, because I had to go through that process, I feel like it's led me to where I am today. Mm-hmm. So, go other way.
Yeah. You guys have any thoughts on that, Kayla and Katie?
I mean, I was just thinking that I basically built mistakes into my business plan. I know I'm going to make mistakes probably every day, so it was one of those things that I kind of, you can't count on that, but you can at least assume that you can surround yourself with people who can help you, which I think is a huge, huge thing too. It's like starting a business when you're young and starting it right out of school is amazing, but it's difficult, and the best thing you can do is surround yourself with good people.
How do you guys handle the business side of your business, basically? You guys are all artists, but you also have to run businesses that meet deadlines and budgets and stuff like that.
It's not my favorite part. I didn't get into design to, run a business, really. I didn't ever, want to be a business owner. But because you love designing or you love what you do so much, you sort of take the good with the bad, and that's how I approach it every day. It's like if I don't do my profit and loss, or if I don't write my checks, or I don't do that kind of stuff, then everything else suffers. So you have to keep up with that in order to keep doing what you love.
Daniel, what about you?
I don't know the structure of everyone else's company, but I'm looking for my Domenico de Sole, like I'm looking for my nice Robert Duffy. I'm looking for my Max. So I have supplemented the CEO, CFO, everything down to a bookkeeper, like all the boring shit that none of us want to talk about on a panel is honestly the part that will trip you up. Talent is out there. I'm sure, only a handful of you raised your hands to be designers, but talent in cash flow analysis, talent in like growth strategy. Like we can't do our jobs until someone can help us do theirs. So I've had to learn that stuff, and so I don't have the business partner, so I'm equally left and right-brained. And I always say, yes, I'm artistic, but I'm not an artist. I'm a fashion designer, and we work in a very tight schedule, budget. I'm not a fine artist who can spend 3 years working on something. So I think it's, before you guys, if ever, any of you are interested in working or being a designer, understanding that there's restrictions that will be put on you by the industry. So be prepared, and if you don't know what that is, find a group, a team, anything that can help answer those questions so you don't, the design and talent doesn't get tripped up.
Yeah, I think I was really lucky to find someone to build my brand with and who could be focused on that end of it. But I think it's really naive for designers to think they can't be aware of it, because, you know, when we started it, my partner said to me, it's like, there's a difference between a hobby and a company, and that's true. You know, this is a business at the end of the day, and so you have to be aware of that. And really just try to find someone who really has the same vision for your brand, so you're kind of growing with the same intention.
Totally. So while we're on the topic of numbers, let's talk about money, because it's really expensive to start a line. There's all sorts of expenses. So who wants to sort of talk about where you got your startup capital? Are you looking for investors?
Triple what you think it's going, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's way more than you
Yeah,
are
it's
expecting.
insane.
Triple the amount of time and the amount of money to
Triple
just
if you're
get you through
lucky.
the first season.
Yeah, budgets are just like a fun little exercise in Excel.
That you do as
way
you
It
over
doesn't end
yeah.
up meaning that much. It should, but that's the hard part, yeah.
So besides being fortunate enough to have friends or family that will support you financially, where else can a young designer look for startup capital?
Well, for me, I had a unique situation in that I was working at Teen Vogue when I kind of started my line, and I had the opportunity of servicing clients through my father's firm. So I was basically a custom designer while I was still in school at NYU, and so I saved that money, and that went towards launching my wholesale division. But I'd say that, you know, anybody who wants to be a designer, if you put yourself out there, there's so many platforms, social media, and so many ways to reach an audience. You can find someone to start making dresses for. She'll tell her friends. You know, you'll get a few more clients. You can save that money. You know, it worked out for me, so yeah.
Are any of you guys currently looking for investors, or have you raised from outside investors before?
I think, for me, real quick, I'm going to speak really fast because it's really long-winded. When I started my company, my family, my mom's the secretary, my dad is a mechanic. Like we're very blue collar, and we had a family financial advisor, and he helped with all my parents' stuff. And all of a sudden, when I was on Runway, and the idea of becoming professional a lot sooner than I'd thought is a possibility, he sort of opened his door to me and said, Daniel, I've known you since you were 10 years old. I believe in your passion. I believe in your talent. He's in Michigan. He's in West Michigan. And he said, we also do this. Your parents don't need this part of the business, but however, this is, and that's where it started. So I was able to negotiate a contract with my financial advisor, my lawyer, and my accountant before I had a business, because they believed in what I could become. And they're in Michigan. They're very Midwest. They have 9 to 5 jobs. But the reality is, when it comes time to negotiating a contract, I can send it to them. And are they going to be with me when I'm a $30 million company? I don't know. But when you're just starting, really analyze the resources that you guys have around you, because everyone wants investors. Everyone wants free money. But really analyze the resources that you have around you, and that's what I did, and then grew as I grew. Yeah.
If somebody handed you guys $10K right now, where would it go in your business? Would you hire PR? Would it be legal? Accounting?
For 1
Hire
month.
PR for a month.
You can spend that in an afternoon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
100,000?
100,000.
Oh, I
let's
thought
say.
you said
No, well, let's go with the 100.
That's a little
Let's up the
different.
ante
That's
It's
here.
a little different.
Yeah. What's the one thing you wish you could spend more money on?
Employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I second that
Help.
for sure.
Yeah.
I would put it towards employees / building out e-com, because that's where I feel like the wholesale business grows at the pace that it does, and you're at the whim of the market and the consumer and all those things. And I feel like e-com is something that I personally am super excited to explore and make until I have a freestanding store. That is my freestanding store. So make it interesting and unique and exciting, and that's where I put money.
Because you brought it up, I'll run with it. E-commerce is a personal passion of mine. It's what I do for a living, but also I think the community of designers I work with can benefit from it so much. So I'm curious to hear how many of you guys do your own e-commerce right now?
Starting.
Like test driving.
Yeah,
Okay.
same.
And what?
I mean, like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one really obvious benefit, which is much bigger margins because you're not handing half the money to a wholesale or to your retail account. But what other benefits are you looking for from doing e-commerce?
Well, as Daniel said, until you have your own brick and mortar, that's like your own branding platform. You're in control of how it's presented. But with that said, when you're a really small brand, you don't have the resources or personnel. There's no one marketing it and reaching out to people, and actually takes a lot of manpower and money to really support an e-com business, which we knew but learned more obviously as we started, and the orders weren't like rolling in.
You,
I was like,
you're like, but the product's so
Yeah.
great. It's sitting there on the
Why isn't everyone
website.
buying
Why
it?
aren't
So,
they clicking and
I
buying?
need more money to have more people to make more money on the site, so it sort of just sits there. But it's nice to be able to have something that I can control the presentation of.
Yeah, the hardest part is getting people there. I mean, it looks good and there's good product
And getting
on
the
site,
right
but
people there.
Exactly, getting the people who are actually going to buy it there is difficult.
Likes are nice.
Yeah.
Like likes are really nice on Instagram and Facebook, but like how many of you are going to actually plunk down X amount of dollars on what we sell?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. You guys all have a following, right? And you sort of know who your audience is. But I think oftentimes with a lot of designers, there's a big difference between who maybe your online following is and who your customer is, right? So how do you think about servicing that person? Because like Katie, for example, I think you have a huge following, and I think maybe from working at Teen Vogue, it seems like you have a lot of younger girls who love your stuff and recognize your name, but you have really expensive pieces because they're all, tailored so beautifully and they're really luxurious materials. So how do you think about that, sort of bridging that gap?
I don't think too much about it, which I'm not sure is the right thing to say. So when I started my business, I was lucky enough to be working with clients right away. So I know the woman that buys my clothes so well. Like, I know her, I can pick her out of a crowd. And I really am designing for her. Okay. And the stores, they'll buy the collection the way that they want to, but every piece is really designed for that woman. And I have an amazing publicist / kind of my Robert Duffy. And we work really hard on, making sure that we're doing really fun things with our social media and, getting exposure from maybe younger magazines or things like that. So I think that maybe...
And are you thinking that some of those girls are going to grow up to be the Katie Armilio girl?
I mean, I hope so,
Yeah.
but...
I mean, for us, there is a little bit of a disconnect between the girl who I think likes our stuff and the girl who can afford it. And trying to bridge that gap is, a continuous battle.
So is a diffusion line on the horizon for all of you guys, or no?
Well, the Bass shoes have been really helpful for me in that area because there are pieces that we make that I can't afford.
So you
So-
did it.
Yeah, I know. I'm always like, I wish I could buy that,
Right,
but I
and
can't.
it's not, never again, when I hear somebody say like, oh my God, how dare they charge this? It's like, you have no idea.
I know.
The margin we're making,
Yeah.
we don't want to be robbing you. This is what it costs to produce fairly and,
We're
sometimes
not
in America.
robbing you, we're like handing it to you on a silver platter.
Exactly,
I
it's
know.
basically a gift.
Yeah.
But so that part is hard. But getting to work with a company like Bass, who is much bigger, they do mass production. The price point of the shoes is just better. And then I feel like that did bring more customers to the clothing.
And I think, for me, it's not necessarily doing a secondary official line, but like collaborations with like an Anthropology exposes you to such a big group that piece, like whether it's like the white embroidered tank that she got from Anthropology, all of a sudden makes her click over and want to buy the $200 more dress from the main line.
It's that gateway drug.
It's the gateway drug, and so even from a merchandising standpoint, I assume we've all built our merchandising in a way that everything doesn't plateau, that you have those piece, then you have the ones that you really, really need to save a little extra more. So it's the same thing in a marketing strategy.
So that's a really good segue because I want to talk about PR because I think you guys all work with agencies. No? You do your own PR?
Yeah.
Katie, you said Allie does your PR,
Yeah.
right? You have an agency.
My business partner Max handles our PR right now.
Okay.
I have an agency.
I was handling my own PR, now I'm working with somebody.
Why did you decide to go with that? Because it is, as you guys mentioned, extraordinarily expensive to
Yes.
farm
Well,
it out.
I was with an agency, I think maybe the same one as you. Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, love them, wonderful.
They're such good people.
But really the best. I had been doing my own PR since the beginning, and that was actually, you know, that's what was working out first, and the sales needed catching up to the PR. Crop is amazing, but super expensive. And what I found, I have a really great friend who handles the PR for Bass. I met her through the collaboration, and so she is now helping us out.
What do you guys feel was like the biggest PR thing? Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm wondering.
That's the question I was going to ask next. What was like the number one thing that changed it for you? That, like,
because an agency or anyone will say you need more of this, but as designers, what do you guys actually think, like PR-wise, was the most beneficial thing for you guys? Like more well stories, a celebrity?
I mean,
Celebrity is huge.
yeah, celebrity is big. But I don't know, from my perspective, I think like the well stories are the more exciting, not more exciting, but there's something different about it. It feels like a little bit more of an insider validation.
Can you tell us what a well story is? Because I don't know if everybody
like
knows.
in the you know, in your Vogue or what have you, when you get to the end and there's all the beautiful fashion stories, like all of the spreads of different stories. That feels like a more of an industry validation, which is really
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But it doesn't turn the
sales-wise, I
needle
don't
on
think.
sales
Yeah.
as
No,
much.
it doesn't.
No,
really,
I mean, but celebrity, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that does either.
I think it's so hit or miss.
It depends on the celebrity too.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how like you have something run in like People Style Watch.
Right. That's
And
the biggest.
just the pure numbers of like traffic that is based off like a shoe in Vogue, it's amazing. But again, you can't have one or the other.
Right.
So you sort of
It's
have to
important
attack it
have
all.
Yeah.
So in terms of PR, do you guys all I assume you guys all show in some capacity during Fashion Week. Do you guys all do presentations or shows, or do you just do market appointments?
I've done both. Now we're sort of in the swing of doing presentations, but both.
It's a lot of resources that you put towards it, right?
Yeah, and to have a lot of people that are willing to work for free, donate their time, and just to be a part of it and believe in the larger vision, I suppose is the best way to say it. But it's being an emerging designer, that helping hand is really the only way sometimes things can get done. So
Are the shows more about press or for buyers for you guys? Or both?
I think press now.
We had literally an entire season a year ago where we had a phenomenal show that was 6 figures to produce, and none of our new accounts were at the show.
it's like
None of them.
it happens. Like all the stars have to align in every situation. I feel.
But it also feels like you have market you have market appointments right after the show anyway. So it's like, why are they going to do both? They're busy. It doesn't really necessarily translate to. It's basically just for. It feels like it's just for PR to do the show, but not that that's not valid. It's just not. It's not really about sales.
Yeah, we did presentations for a couple seasons. We actually stopped now. Because we're accessories, it's a little bit different. The clothes aren't just sitting on a model, so to really build it out beautifully and interesting for an accessories presentation is complicated and expensive, and we weren't really seeing that it was benefiting us enough to spend the money.
So you just stopped doing it?
We just do private appointments now for press and buyers.
I also think it's really hard when you are working so hard behind the scenes and you're working 16, 18-hour days, and you're like, I just want everyone to see this product. To make sure that your ego is out of it in the decision to actually have a show. I think there was something ungodly like 357 shows during New York last season, and you're like, half of those should never be showing. And I'm not the one to say you should show and you shouldn't show. I mean, maybe Anna does, but literally it's like take your, like as designers, like take your ego out of it and say like, would this have been better presented in a one-on-one, face-to-face presentation? Would video be interesting? It's like, really make sure a show.
I've seen people do bad presentations, and it's hurt them. It made their collection look worse than it is because it looked a little amateur. So you're kind of doing yourself a disservice.
And video is interesting, and I think I know maybe all of you have done videos. Was the video, I assume, is also a really time and money suck, but is that something that feels worth it?
I've never done one.
If it's done well in the right way,
Yeah.
We switched to video from we've been doing presentations, and it was hard to not do one this past season. And when I thought about it, it was fully ego.
It's all
It was like, but it's my day.
Exactly, and you want to walk out.
Right, and it's a fun day.
No.
And to me, the presentations, just to go back to that for a second, it is PR, but it's also branding, because it's one of the few times a year that you get to sort of invite people into the whole world that you see the clothes existing in. So deciding to do a video instead felt really disappointing. And then we did it, and yes, it was a lot of work, but a fraction of the cost, which, again, to be fair, we had a lot of people helping and offering their services for free or trade or whatever. But I feel like we reached more people, because I mean, the show is like a one-day thing. Yeah, the video is forever. Buyers never really come to the show, and they all really like the video. It was a great tool for market appointments. So I think we're going to do it again.
It was really cute.
Thanks.
So with it was adorable.
Thank you.
It was really cute.
So, and with the videos, I know, I've seen people do use them as a sort of an excuse for amazing press dinners and things like that, and you can do the big premiere and reveal. You were saying they're useful in market appointments. Are you showing the video in the appointment and someone's like, I want that girl's wearing in the video?
Right, well, let's see, we didn't show the video in market appointments, actually, most of them, because Style.com Video Fashion Week came
after. A month after. It came after Paris.
Right, so we filmed it, I think, either right before or right after Capsule. But just for other appointments, it was just a great tool to have.
It's like a conversation piece.
Yeah.
For me, it was useful in getting new stores into an appointment.
Okay.
So that if the timing doesn't work out for that collection, it sets the bar for this is the Daniel Vosovic brand. So it's like, oh, I really, really, really want Ikram to come, and I really want Ikram. This is what I did last season. It's going to be even better.
Okay.
You just got to get there to see it.
Cool.
So that's why I used it for.
All right, well, it's time to pass it over to you guys for the Q&A, so.
So my name's Heidi, and I'm actually here with my 16-year-old son, who I'm going to embarrass, who's
This makes me so happy.
an emerging, aspiring fashion designer. And we're just in the process of actually launching a children's line of clothing. All his idea and concepts. But, one of the things that we're really struggling right now is in two areas. One is we have buyers that are interested in, and you go, woohoo, and then you go, oh my God, now we have to fulfill orders and getting small run manufacturing done. And then also the whole fabric side, because, we create samples, and then, we don't want to buy huge supplies of fabric, and then it may be out of stock or whatever. So I'm sure you guys have struggled with some of the same things as you early on in your careers as you were launching. Do you have any advice on, as a startup, how to overcome some of those things?
Be creative in where you're looking for your answers. So do you have a good fabric store in your area? Mm-hmm. Do you have a dialogue with them? Because if you can get them to attach to you, it's amazing what people will do. And it may be a retail store, Mood Fabrics, because a runway, I don't know if I should go on the record saying this. I'll just say they gave me a nice discount still because they believed in me. So if it's Joanne Fabrics and that's what you can get, that's what you have access to, don't bother playing with the big guys and say, okay, we're gonna do our Italian, it's gonna be Italian and it's $1,000 yard minimum. I mean, don't play that game because you'll lose. So, one, be creative with the resources that you have in media around you, and be creative with dyeing, because I ran into this issue my first season, is that find a base, what's your name? Justin? Find a base fabric that is quintessentially Justin, get it in white or ivory, and dye the hell out of it and keep it for 3 or 4 seasons, because your shelf life is going to be more creative. Then you embroider it, then you can screen print it, then you can chop it up. Be creative in how those restrictions, don't change the restrictions, change how you're thinking how to use it. You also have a crap load of restrictions with children's fabrics. Are you aware of that? Okay, yeah, because I mean, the flame retardant, it's very specialized.
Hi, I'm just starting out doing women's outerwear, and very small. I'm just doing piece by piece. I'm not doing full collections. And I wanted to know, when you guys were starting out, how essential is it to have a business plan? I'm starting to work on my business plan, but I just can't seem to complete it yet because I don't really know financially what my strategy is and stuff like that. So did you guys start out with a business plan, or was it something you grew into? Or?
Mine was really loose.
Okay.
Yeah. We tried to figure out, but everything changes the next week.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for a young designer to know all the variables. I mean, it's advisable to have a great business plan, and I think it's good to get advice from someone who can give you a template, and you try to fill it in as much as you can, and you have to keep updating that, but I by no means had anything like really complete.
I always say that a business plan is homework for yourself because you don't know the answers, but you want to have at least thought about it, even if you don't actually know what the answer is. You want to know that you're going to have to worry about it at some point, so you can know what you don't know at least.
Yeah, like what Reece was saying, it's like everything changes so fast. It's almost like not worth the, I mean, it's not worth it, but it's not essential. I think it's more about, you definitely want to know where you're going with it. You want to know your general strategy, but I mean, if it's loose, I don't think that's a problem.
I think the biggest thing that it becomes useful in is when, let's say it does take off, you need to pull on a team member. You have to literally iterate exactly what is going where, and then the team grows into 3 and then it goes into 5. If you have it down on paper, at least if it's just you and maybe a small investor, you and the bank, like that's when it will become, I think, useful.
Somebody right here in the front row.
My name is Nishika. First, I want to thank you guys for being here. It's been so inspirational to hear all of these great stories. My background is actually quite different. I actually come from 9 to 10 years of being in the business world, helping companies transform and grow, mostly companies like Apple and Levi's and Chevron and others. And purposefully, I'm sort of falling into the whole fashion bucket. Similar to you, I kind of went down the path of always designing things in my head and then getting other people to make them for me, because I only went through one sewing class and I stitched a dress, and I've hand sewn other dresses and other things, but you know, I've used resources around to kind of bring to fruition and into something tangible my designs in my head. So in the last 5 months, I've kind of gone down the path of putting together, you know, my business plan and what I really want to do, and I'm currently doing my first prototype. So my question to you guys out there who've been in it for 3 to 4 years is, you know, I've got the business background, I get cash flow and growth projections, and I actually like that stuff, believe it or not. But I love even more the design side of the house. I can't do patterns, but I've sort of been reading a lot and educating myself a ton on garment construction and, you know, what are patterns and what is a marker and how do you cut and yada, yada, yada. What am I going to stumble across? Like, when am I going to sort of fall flat on my face because I don't have a fashion background? What advice do you guys have?
I would like to clarify, I studied how to make a pattern, but I don't make my patterns for my handbags. Yeah, I work with pattern makers, and so I think it's important to that I understand it. It helps me when I'm designing and when I'm talking to a factory or pattern maker, but there is someone else who's making my pattern who has like years and years of experience in that.
I don't trust myself enough.
I don't think most designers actually, for the most part, make their designs. You have to find a really good pattern maker that you can communicate well with.
Yeah.
But it's good to understand it because you can understand when you're talking and working over something.
And I actually learned the difference in hiring a 25-year-old to do my patterns as opposed to a 50-year-old. And in that salary is through the roof, and she gets it right almost every time the first time. And I pay, what? The 50-year-old. Because I am taking risks with the design. I'm the one that wants to mess up. But if the sewing's crap, then that's the 50-year-old's fault. If the pattern's crap, it's the 50-year-old. So everyone who works for me is all like up here, because then I can take the risks. But if your patterns suck and they fit and it's really well designed, stores won't care.
How have you kind of balanced the trade-off between, you know, financial obligations and getting the best team, right? Because it's a trade-off. I mean, it's easier to pay the 25-year-old, kind of like you said, versus a 50-year-old. But
realizing that the 25-year-old, and I'm not disparaging 25-year-olds, 25-year-old may have to do that pattern 3 times. So knowing and acknowledging where to cut your corners. Can you do your online, can you do your social media? Could your 14-year-old cousin do the social media if you tell her what to do? Probably. And she'll do it for a t-shirt instead of hiring an agency. You know, like, learn where to cut your corners that it's not going to hurt your bottom line.
You don't want to skimp on your product.
Yeah, don't ever cut there. It'll come back. Like, you think you're saving money, like, on the front end, like, you're going to pay, like, tenfold on the back end.
And all those stores are going to charge back.
You want to do it right the first time.
Okay, so we actually have to wrap it up now. So I'll ask one final closeout lightning round question. What established designer does each of you sort of look to and say, that's where I want my line to be in 20 years, or that's who's inspiring me, I'm emulating? I sent you guys all this question before, man. Didn't you? It's fine.
All right, well,
okay.
I mean, for me, actually, the people whose careers I aspire to are not necessarily the designers that but which is a really rude way to preface my answer. So maybe I'll pass. I just think that it would be
it was not as good of a question
in the future.
as I
I think it would be really great to have just a solid, what you said, a business to pass down to your children. That's what I see it. My business is a family business now, and I would love for it to stay that way. And I just want it to continue growing slowly and have.
That's a great answer. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.